All right. Hi again, everyone. I know it's been a little while since I've been here, so I hope you're all doing really well. I've just been quite busy with a lot of other stuff. I know I've done a lot of Excel videos lately, so I thought I might jump in and talk a little bit about Vinco Ventures pre-market, because this is kind of a big-ish week again for BBIG stock. Not that it's my favorite out there, but I do hold the stock, and I am holding it through to the distribution date. Anyway, to say I am ticked off at Vinco Ventures is a bit of an understatement. While they have now re-announced the distribution date for CrypTyde, the dividend, which is not actually a dividend, they have continued to flop about in terms of their language and I guess intentions, even to the last minute with this. So to start with, as I have said all along, CrypTyde stock dividend is not a dividend, despite how much Vinco Ventures has tried to sell the retail market on such a title. It is a stock spin-off as a result of the demerger. Further evidence of Tyde not being a dividend was seen when Vinco board last bungled the spin-off back, I think it was May 18th, when they set a record date which they couldn't deliver on. And the reason why the Tyde stocks couldn't be delivered is because they hadn't passed SEC criteria. Okay, so it's like, they've dropped the ball on this one numerous times. Furthermore, their interpretation of a record date is quite loose, I suppose, as it then was released after the fact that shareholders of record still need to hold their stock through to the distribution date, which is now June 29th, which is not what a record date is. A record date is holders of the stock on this day receive the dividend when it's paid. Not you have to be holding the stock on this day through to this day. This is why it's not a dividend. And they've got their own interpretations of what a record date is, and I think this is why the company could be getting into some trouble later on down the track. Anyway, to mask this bungling, Vinco is now referring to having two classes of shares. If you saw their announcement last Friday, I say it with inverted commas, those that have traded away the rights of Tyde stock and those who have not are the two classes of shares. Reality is there is not a second class of BBIG stock. There are two groups of shareholders amongst the BBIG holdings, those that have lost their rights to the Tyde stock due to their shifting goalposts that Vinco Ventures has applied to this, and those that have been holding the stock since the record date back on May 18. I don't know why Vinco board insists on trying to blatantly put this BS spin on the move, which they have clearly bungled numerous times over the past 12 months. Anyway, now that the distribution date is confirmed, Vinco Ventures have added another further twist to this spin-off saga in the form of the partial Tyde shares. Now, if you go back and look at the, original iteration of the Tyde spin-off, they said any partial Tyde shares which would calculate, which wouldn't qualify for, sorry, let me start again. So, where there were partial Tyde shares calculated, as is, sorry, I don't know how you say it. So, as you're getting 10 BBIG stocks, we're going to get you one Tyde share. If you had a number that didn't quite equal to a multiple of 10, you were originally going to get a small cash distribution to make up that amount. So it's not going to be a very big amount. It's going to be less than the value of a Tyde share. However, Friday's announcement has changed that. If you look at the wording, well, at least confuse it. I'll just check, I'll write it exactly for you what the announcement says, because I'm kind of bundling this a little bit. I should be on the BBIG board. Anyway, no fractional shares of CrypTyde common stock will be issued in the distribution. Instead, fractional shares will be aggregated into whole shares and sold in the open market at prevailing prices, and the cash proceeds of such sales will be distributed pro rata to each Vinco stockholder that would otherwise have been entitled to receive a fractional share. Okay, so there will still be a cash distribution, but only for partial shares, and it's based on what they are able to fetch when sold on market. So now we can actually get a little bit of an indication as to how the CrypTyde stock has been performing. And perhaps unbeknownst to most investors, CrypTyde has actually been trading on the NASDAQ under the ticker symbol TYDEV, a ticker symbol which is set to change to the TYDE TYDE following the June 29th spin-off. Anyway, the Tyde V stock has quietly been trading since May 18, and which was the record date originally. It was floated at $18.15. which was quite impressive. However, if you look at their chart, just go on Google, have a look, you can see that it very quickly found itself down to about $6.49 at the close of market last week. So this is useful to get some indication for what your future Tide shares are going to be worth. $6.49 is actually more than I expected them to be worth, but my thoughts are, however, that we are probably going to see a further dip in the Tide price following Wednesday. This is because there's likely to be a bit of a dump in these shares when shareholders of BBIG stock finally receive those Tide shares. And when you consider further that the fact that at $6.49, CrypTyde is likely overpriced. Presently, it is reading as having a market capitalization of 67 million. However, I do remember reading last year that the assets going into CrypTyde were only going to be worth, I think, about $30 million. And then when you factor in how much less value crypto assets are today compared to last year when they first touted this move, it just sort of seems that like $6.49 is probably a bit too high for what CrypTyde is going to be trading at. However, the value of assets being distributed to CrypTyde may have indeed changed, as so much has changed with this company all along. So I wouldn't be surprised if that is the case and they just haven't released information about it. So yeah, it's just been one turn after another. Anyway, as well as my expectation that Tide will at least initially experience a bit of a dump, I'm also expecting a similar reaction from BBIG shareholders who have been fed up by the whole Tide saga and just want to get out of the investment. So in terms of price action, I'm expecting to see a bit of price volatility and perhaps even a bit of a dump in BBIG shares from Wednesday. So if you look back on Friday's trade, the stock gave up 17 cents during the regular session, which is pretty poor considering that the Nasdaq gained about 3.5%. However, there's promising signs that the stock is looking like it's up about 9 cents in the pre-market. So perhaps we're going to regain some of that. In terms of where I'm thinking the stock could fall to, looking at recent trading history, just bring up my chart here. I reckon we could be in, here it is. I reckon we could be looking for something around the $1.90 mark as low point, or maybe $1.95. Looks like there's a bit of lower resistance there for where the stock could retreat to following Wednesday, when the people who've been holding the stock for the Tide dividend start to move out of the stock and cut their losses. Anyway, I think that's kind of my take on the whole distribution date. I've not been a fan of the way they've handled it the whole way through. I still think that Vinco Ventures has a few good things going for it. I think their low motive platform is kind of coming into its own, and I think it'll be nice to see some stats and data around new users and see if that is growing. They are really targeting the Indian market, which is where TikTok is banned, and so it's obviously a huge market. 1.5 billion people live there, and then they have family and relatives spread throughout the world, which would could help influence the spread of low motive into those other regions. And the fact that they've now using AI-based ad riser to place ads not just on low motive but other platforms as well, and that has proven to be quite successful and starting to bring in some somewhat decent revenues for the company. There's also a bit of a risk there though, however, that there's still a number of warrants that could and probably will be executed in the next 2 years. I think there's a whole bunch set to come in July this year, and then which is going to lead to some short-term volatility beyond the CrypTyde spinoff finally being finalized, but also again July in 2023. So I think you've got to keep an eye out what's happening with that. In terms of company news, Vinco hasn't really put out much recently, other than the stuff around CrypTyde, which is obviously, I think they still will be holding a percentage of the CrypTyde stocks. I'm not sure if you do know the answer, let me know in the comments, but no one's online at the moment. My luck. All right. Well, I won't leave it. I won't stay on here for too much longer. I know market's opening in about 45 minutes and I've got to go look into it myself, but I'll post this video as a normal video. If anyone wants to ask me any questions, do so in the comments. I will reply. yeah, anyway, hopefully we have a good week. Last week was a good one. We got a bit of rebound, except for BBIGs. But yeah, anyway, guys, until next time, the market's trading in your favour. Cheers.